It's my big pleasure to be speaking here today representing the artists. Not only that, but also how the politically and socially engaged arts can be tools for democratic participation. Many of the things I have on my slide, on my notes, have already been mentioned, but I guess our trilogy of perspectives on culture and arts can only emphasize the importance of what has already also been mentioned. I am a practicing artist, but also a scientist in the architectural history perspectives, working at the moment in a very transdisciplinary discourse. I brought to you some slides that are just going to run while I'm speaking, that are coming from diverse practices of engaging the arts for political and social engaged discourses. So I am convinced of my own experience that the arts are building empathy and emotional access, that the arts can, through activating the senses. We speak of bodily senses, bodily experiences of meetings of people in real spaces, the smells, the visuals, and the touch, so a multisensorial activation can somehow really build the empathy we all need desperately in our societies today. So I think that the arts are really a space to produce these kind of empathetic discourses and also experiences in the so-called, I have highlighted here also the safe spaces, the artistic spaces, the museums that are these safe spaces for a diversity of thought that can be really developed. So what is the role of the artists in all of this? So I think the artists have an extremely privileged position because of the trust that is given to them, what have also this recent study that Ines just mentioned are really showing. So we are the ones that might enter spaces of investigation, and I have really experienced that in my practice in Southern Africa, in Brazil, in other places where I investigated, that when you come as an artist, you can have another kind of open door than if you would come maybe as a scientist or a politician. But not only that, also to the public spaces of our cities, and not only the big metropoles, but also the less urbanized spaces. So my practice and experience has really been to unearth somehow invisibilities, things we don't want to talk about, structures we don't want to see, and how as the arts can we somehow unearth these invisible structures and also address them from within the institutions. I see that this is not yet working. The green, yes. Oh, there we go. So these are some stills of films that I did. I think the arts have an extreme big potential for imagination, for fostering, imagining other futures, new futures, and I'm there not kind of in an idealistic space, but how can we live in the ruins of modernism, of modernity that have brought us to the place where we are in today. So I guess testing, playing within the safe space of culture can really bring up new imaginations, but not only imagination for the future, but also the images that we create of our past. And I think there is also brilliant connections to Ines's work on the importance of history. So while we look to the future and we speak about this information, we have to be, we can clearly see how historical thought and narratives of our past are actively eliminated and silenced. At the same time, I think that we need a strong focus through the arts to revisit these narratives of the past and give back these voices, these silenced voices of the minorities, of disadvantaged voices, and bring them through arts and culture to the foreground. We have talked a lot today about media literacy. So I would go a little bit further. We are all on our phones, and of course there's more text-based social media, but a lot of it is based on images. So we didn't really talk on image literacy. I would there really advocate that the culture and arts sector is really specifically primed and equipped in the methodologies to really to critically enhance and also teach image literacy. What are the images that are created here to question what we see in front of us, be it historical images as this one, which is taken by Swiss neutral military officers in North Korea after the armistice agreement in 1953, where they served until up to date as an observatory of the post-war condition in Korea, sorry. So I think, how do we look at images that are coming across in a time of disinformation? We need knowledge on our histories. We speak about disinformation, but who is really producing then the information that we want to hear and that we want to distribute? It has been highlighted, of course, journalism is one of these pillars. But I would really say, let's not forget about the sciences, about academia that are constantly producing valuable information, and that needs to go through policy making into the public. So I guess, and the same, of course, with artistic research that then is actually producing maybe more diverse histories and more diverse narratives that are more inclusive and more diverse. So I really advocate also that the arts are an excellent tool to revisit knowledge of our histories that have brought us in a kind of longue durée to where we are today, a broken planet not only for human life, but also for non-human life in an ecological degradation we haven't seen in the last 500 years. I would also highlight that the arts are really important when we speak about these histories, how, we still live in these post-colonial continuities produced by diverse European imperial actors. We're here in a European space, including also seemingly neutral states like Switzerland, and how can these continuities that we are in today really talk to the social economic inequalities we are living with between the so-called global north and the south, where we live with the continuum of racism and also the migration across the fortress Europe. So I am now coming maybe back to the importance of archives, all kinds of archives and the collections, and how we can reactivate them to really build the stories of how we came here. And I would really argue for this collaboration of the construction of information, not only through the arts, but the collaboration with the sciences, journalism, and really importantly, politics. And to come back also to Philipp Bischoff, from the arts, we need funding, we need to be valued, and it needs to be manifested into policies. Thank you so much.
Yes, ladies and gentlemen, it's a great pleasure for us to be here. And first of all, maybe I want to underline how important it seems to be to me that culture is part of this day. Why do I say that? For you, maybe it's obvious, but what we experience, I think the three of us very often, that in political programs, culture doesn't play a real role, but it should play a real role, especially when you talk about the topics we talk about today. We have heard it in the very beginning by the General Secretary. It's also about relearning democracy. And personally, I'm very much convinced about the fact that education must play a key role if we want to relearn or to rethink democracy, but also culture. What I will try to is just to give you a bit of a framework. It's maybe also interesting for you because this panel is composed by someone, this is me, who has been working cultural policy for almost 20 years, then a person who has an enormous experience, amongst others, in cultural institutions, and then an artist. While listening to the different experts and listening to the questions, that within the cultural sector we are maybe and logically in the very same situation you experience from other fields. We are facing an enormous tendency to polarization, also when it's coming to talk about cultural policy. Why? You might think, and we don't discuss what culture is, we could spend an entire day talking about what culture is. There is also a wonderful text by Justin O'Connor about that. We've observed actually an increasing mistrust in cultural policy going through Europe. And combined with this mistrust is also questioning of values. We have been defending over years and decades that our diversity, that our, let's just stay there, diversity and other minority issues that have been enormously defended within the last 10, 20 years. And they are, as you all know, under attack, what has a direct impact for the cultural policies of Europe as well. What I find personally very interesting is that within the cultural sector there is a kind of a cultural war. It's a too strong word. In German there is this word of Kulturkampf, what personally I don't like at all, but it's used very often, translated as cultural war. Let's say a debate, a discussion about two things. Is culture, are the arts political or not? You all know this discussion. This is always a discussion. I mean, I cannot imagine an art that is not in a way political, even though it's not explicitly political, but in its impact as talking to citizens, to persons, it is logically for me political. But there is a part of society, of the politicians that would like to separate the arts actually more from a political agenda. And then on the side of those who say, no, art or culture is political, we have actually a very strong debate about or between different identity politics. That is very interesting to observe. There is a very clear right-wing tendency that is leading or wanting to lead cultural policy back to really national identity issues, very strongly to the heritage, but always connected with one clear idea of what this heritage is, what this identity is, and then logically and certainly on the other side, you have all those who say, no, we have to open up. In principle, we have to get out of the national definition, etc., etc. So just to tell you, there is different debates going on within the sector itself. What should we defend as representatives of different layers of this sector? First of all, I think the beauty of art, of culture, always is, you can call it a training camp for democracy. What do I mean with that? You all maybe have had this experience that I always find a bit painful. You're sitting in a cinema, you're looking at a film, let's say it's a comedy, and the people around you laugh, and you don't because you don't find it funny. This is happening in very normal. So what do? You disagree in a way with the people, but the contract we all live in a way is we agree to disagree. So we accept it, we even learn through the fact that the others smile, laugh, whatever, and we don't. Why do they? What is it? The same with a book, the same with a theater play. That's the beauty of the arts, in my opinion. So what we have to do is defend this open-minded framework that is helping us to support other opinions. Now, when we talk about disinformation, I was reflecting on what could I contribute, and I was even asking myself, could the arts be the better informations or the truth? No, they don't have to. But what I find very interesting is that the arts, in all their varieties, they can help us to deal with other informations, with informations about others, and exactly therein again to say, okay, I don't agree, I don't see it differently. Very interesting. You know, you all have read books. maybe recommended by friends, and you didn't like them or didn't understand them, and they liked it. That's exactly what, for me, one of the senses of the arts of culture is, to understand that there is other opinions. And that's exactly what actually is so difficult in a situation of this polarization, of very clear also silencing within the sector, of people that are afraid because they are attacked when they stand up for certain positions, when they fight for certain ideas, identities, etc. My deep conviction is exactly about bridging between the different positions. That's what the arts can do, that's what the culture, in a way, in general does, and that's also what cultural institution, I won't talk about it, basically should do, I would say. Now, taking all this together and not ending in a depression, because it is a difficult situation, we have to advocate for the arts, we have to defend it, and we shouldn't step back and say, yeah, maybe it's a bit dangerous, maybe we should accept that culture is under pressure. We shouldn't. And to maybe also give you an example of how concretely this could look like. And I'm very honest with you, I have no recipe at all. But I recently had a discussion with a professor from Paris, sociologist, Pascal Lebrun, and he has been developing a new model of contracts between the state and funded institutions. And this model is called contrat de résonance. In French, it would be a contract of resonance, in a way. And it is based on the idea, on the book of a German sociologist, Hartmut Rosa, who was writing about resonance as a deep, deep necessity in today's societies. And what I find very interesting is that contrat de résonance is the approach. The approach is based on the observation that let's say, the contract, the deal between the state and the institution, by giving money and saying you have to, is not leading to something very inspiring and interesting, because it risks to forget important elements that kind of frame the work of a cultural institution. And through this idea of contrat de résonance, they have defined 5 levels that compose this contract, and the first is the context. I think we have heard it in the morning very often. It's a lot about context, to integrate the context and to differentiate between different contexts. So this contrat de résonance asks for an analysis of the context by the institution. And only after having analyzed the context, what is people living there, what is topics, what is the history, they develop a program based on the context. And based on the program, they define a financial plan, a business plan, and so on and so on. I find that a very beautiful model, and also a very beautiful term, contrat de résonance, because at the end, as I said in the beginning, and I hope it became clear, what we need to provoke is resonance. Resonance is dialogue. Resonance needs listening, needs also speaking out. Only the one, only the other doesn't lead to a real relationship between cultural institutions and the citizens. Culture is seen, and you know that, as an enormous soft power. The fact that it is seen as such exactly proves its potential power when it's free. But it is very often and more, unfortunately, abused. I don't want to name any country, you know them. It's not to be polite, but I don't have to. But you know that cultural policies in many countries are absolutely instrumentalized. And this is something, because we are in a political context, that is a danger. Not because these politics that are defined are the wrong ones for me or for whoever, because in general it takes away the general idea, I would say, of culture, of the arts, that should be political but not politicized. I hope you know what I mean. It is fantastic when the arts have a political impact, but it shouldn't be just one direction or just serving one government, one idea. We have to defend the freedom around the arts to really go in the direction in which artists want to go, whether we like it or not. Only then this subsistence, this social subsystem can develop its power. Thanks a lot.
Hi everyone. Thank you for staying so late on a Friday afternoon. As a daughter of someone who worked across the pond, it's also been very reassuring to see how the Council of Europe works these themes across the board: disinformation, hate speech, artificial intelligence, public policies. But the hackathon process really takes it to the next level. So congratulations for taking that risk. Of course, as a member of the Observatory for History Teaching in Europe, I'm rooting for the teachers and students group that did their pitch earlier today, and I hope the jury can disregard my partiality. So institutions, I am here on behalf of cultural institutions. The Carlos Gulbenkian Museum integrates the Carlos Gulbenkian Foundation. Some of you may be familiar with it. And in what pertains to disinformation, before I speak about museums in general, I wanted to draw your attention to an initiative called Pinocchio in Schools, and an initiative that is a national level action in Portugal that really takes the analysis of information and triaging of information as skills to be developed to schools by peer groups. And so if you want to know more about that initiative, feel free to consult the website. With us, those of us who work in museums, heritage sites, and sites of conscience, we are used to working our collections, since we tend to be institutions that hold either collections, material or immaterial. Stories are collections. And we tend to organize ourselves in two big groups. The first group pertains to those museums who work content. And usually that means, when we want to talk about this information, that we are talking about museums that talk specifically about a historical period, a national historical period, a museum of identities, a museum of political resistance, a museum of the Holocaust, for example. And the content is there. And what you are discussing is the facts. But most museums, most cultural institutions in Europe are not specifically related to, in such an obvious way, to the discussion of facts and disinformation. So for those museums, what we do is that we work on skills, so that we are not limited by content. We use the stories that we tell and the collections that we hold as activators of a model for skill development. And this is because museums, cultural institutions, sites of conscience hold, according to studies, some of the highest levels of public trust in Europe. So we need to activate that trust in order to develop and practice skills that, like a muscle, that allow us to look into disinformation, how it happens, and how we can fight it in a safe space, and in a space that is actually quite small when we compare it to the initiatives that are being discussed here today. And these skills are critical observation, critical interpretation, multi-perspectivity, evaluating and triaging information, and one very important skill, the ability to live with a lack of closure, with not knowing the result, the outcome of whatever it is you are looking at, understanding that you may be part of the process, but you are not yet at the point of arrival. And this happens, of course, in a safe, open-ended environment that is the gallery space, the museum space, and the heritage space. Now, for example, in my museum, the museum where I work, our collection is of high-end works of art. We're talking about Monet, we're talking about 18th century silver, we're talking about ancient Egypt. This is not the stuff that directly connects to disinformation as it happens today. However, through methodologies, through practices, through looking at the works of art as the beginning of processes, we've been able to develop public programs geared at schools, geared at adults, geared at families and groups of visitors that work on, for example, sustainability and global capitalism, the means and contents of disinformation, and the critical use of artificial intelligence. So All day we've been discussing what we can do at macro level. We've been talking about public policies, and the pitches that we've heard have focused on tools and resources that can help millions fight instantly disinformation. What I bring you here is the slow process of discussion, of debate that happens in enclosed safe spaces. There's no streaming, there's no recording, there's no webinar going on. If there's anything my experiences have taught me in my time spent here at the Council of Europe, is that solutions, good solutions, are not made top to bottom. So in addition to public policy and large-scale technological solutions, we need to bring in the small, safe spaces. Solutions must be multi-pronged and complex. Partnering institutions among themselves, partnering institutions of the cultural kind and of the arts kind with other types of institutions, collectivities, and associations, in addition with individual citizens, is the kind of work that can be undertaken at a micro level, and it is the cumulative effect of thousands of these processes occurring every day throughout Europe that can, if not make everything well, at least keep the barbarians at the gate while the complex solutions are being put into practice. Thank you very much for your time.